Good morning, everyone. We are allowing folks to continue to come in. So if you will just give us another minute or two so that we have over 20 organizations or individuals registered for this Morning Bidders Conference. And so we are just giving them a minute to get themselves in and settled. Okay, I don't think we have any additional folks in the wait room, but as they continue to come in, Demetrica will let them in. Welcome, everybody. My name is Christy Goldwire. I see some familiar faces and I see new faces, so it's nice to meet everyone. I am the Director of Program Operations here at the Trust, and you have joined our Morning Bidders Conference for the after school RFP that was released, I believe on the 12th. Before we get started, I am going to have the Children's Trust team members who are also on the Zoom to introduce themselves. And so I am just going to call their names and they will introduce themselves to you and let you know what they do here at the Trust. So I'm going to start with Bonnie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bonnie Wagner. I'm the Research Planning and Evaluation Coordinator.
Up next is Demetrica.
Good morning. I'm Demetrica Tyson, Program Specialist.
Belita.
Good morning. I'm Belita James, Contract Manager with the Trust.
Dion. Dion, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Dion Carruthers, Contract Manager.
Okay. And then our fiscal team.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Odom, and I am in the Fiscal Administration.
Diana Sanchez, Fiscal.
All right. Am I missing anyone? I think I got everybody. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get the presentation started for the Bidders Conference. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen. And I'm going to go ahead to the agenda for the Bidders Conference. So the whole purpose of the Bidders Conference today is to really give you all an opportunity to review the RFP, review the application, so that we can give you more information about what our expectations are, and also allow you to ask questions. Anytime the Trust releases a funding opportunity, we go under a cone of silence. The staff is under a cone of silence. Our board is under a cone of silence. And then therefore, this is your opportunity to ask us questions that you may have regarding the RFP or the funding opportunity that we have released. And so there are other opportunities to ask questions, and when I get to that slide, I'll let you know. But this is the information that we will review today. We'll talk about the minimum requirements to bid, the timeline, the term. We'll go over different areas of the scope. Our contract managers will talk about the contracting process. Bonnie will speak to you about performance measures and data collection. And then we'll also review the actual forms of the application and ensure that you understand what attachments that we are asking for. And then at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have.
Christy,
Yes.
someone is asking more details on explaining what cone of silence mean.
Okay, yes, thank you. So the cone of silence is when it starts at the release of a funding opportunity and goes all the way through board approval for the funding for the RFP. And what it means is that the community cannot ask specific questions about the RFP, get suggestions about their potential program idea. That is what the cone of silence means. So you can't ask those specific questions to the staff or to the board unless it is during the bidders conference or via the submit a question link that I am going to show you all. All right. The slide that you see here is just to inform you that this meeting is recorded. The recording of the bidders conference, the 10 a.m. conference, as well as the 6 p.m. conference, both will be shared on the RFP bid page. We're asking that you keep your microphones muted. Unless you have a question, you can use of course, use the raise your hand function, and someone on the team will let me know because I can't see any of that while I'm sharing the screen. And then any questions that we get during this process on both bidders conferences, as well as questions in the chat, questions that you actually ask, will be added to an addendum that is added to the RFP bid page. So I wanted to start with showing you where to find the bid. At this point, most of you have already located where it's at. This is our homepage on our website. And our website is Children's Trust of Alachua County .us. And so that's how you find us. And you'll see the arrow, that is where you will locate all open bids that we have. When you click on that bid page, let me go back for a second. So when you click where it says bids and RFPs, this is what it will open. And so you have a few different options. If the arrow at the top where it says open, if you wanted to see what we've already awarded, if you wanted to see what RFPs are closed, or if you wanted to see those that are open, that's a drop-down box for you to identify what you're looking for and how to find those. This is an open RFP. And so you want to make sure that is on open, and it'll identify all of the current RFPs that are open and that we're accepting bids for. Currently, right this moment, the after school RFP is the only one that is open. So that is what you will see when you go to that page. If you go down a little to the left of your screen where the arrow is pointing to the after school RFP, that will open the actual bid page, and I am going to show you all that. And then you have the arrow to the left of your page. Those are the individual, I'm sorry, to the right of your page. Those are the individual forms that you can download. A couple of things we want to make sure you keep in mind, that is, we don't want you to fill out the application within the full 95-page RFP. You can download those individually, and that is what you're supposed to submit back to us. You download them, you save them on your computer, therefore you're not always going back to our website to find those forms, but that is also how you can download them individually. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can show you all what the bid page actually looks like. Belita, can you shake your head and let me know if you all see the website? Yes, all right, perfect. So this is what our actual bid page looks like. It should, I'm hoping it's moving for you guys. And so when you open the bid page, it'll give you the information that you need to inform or to identify that you're on the correct bid page website. It has all of the information as it relates to the due date, the reference number, and it gives you an overview of the RFP. It tells you how much funding is allocated for this RFP as well. There are also a couple other things I'd like for you to point out or note rather. Here, and I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. Does it show my mouse on the bid page? Here, okay, perfect. So this after school programming update email list, you can add your contact information there, and that will prompt us that every time we add something to this bid page that you'll get notified. And so that's the best way to stay informed of any changes, any updates, as well as when we upload questions that we have received for this RFP. So I would strongly encourage you all to make sure you go to this bid page and add your name and your email address here, and therefore we will keep you informed of any changes and when we upload questions. Also on this bid page is it takes you through the timeline of the RFP. As you can see here, we're having our bidders conferences today. We have the 10 a.m. and then the 6 p.m. You just click on the time to register for that bid conference. This is the link here to submit questions. You click this, it opens a web form, and that is where you submit your question, and then we are notified when someone has asked a question. This is best used after the bidders conferences are over. You cannot, because of the cone of silence, you cannot call the CTAC staff, you cannot call the board members, because there is language in the RFP that says that you risk being disqualified from applying from the funding if you are trying to get information from staff or board members as it relates to an open bid. The last day to submit questions to staff using this link is June 2nd, and we will post the final questions on June 6th. So the trust is also offering office hours for technical support. And the way you can request a schedule or a date to come and sit with someone on the programs team or the fiscal team for technical support is the 24th, the 31st, or the 7th. And so all you have to do is send an email to the procurement email address that you see here, and that is how you request technical support. Now, that could be as it relates to your documentation. Do I have the correct documentation? It is not for you to run your idea by us. I am considering offering this type of support for high school students for their enrichment clubs. That is not the point of technical support. It is to ensure that you have the necessary documentation. If a form isn't working correctly for you, or you don't understand how to complete it, that is what that technical support is for. Moving right along, the application deadline is June 16th, 3 p.m. And we will also have a bid opening on the 16th at 4 p.m. The purpose of the bid opening is to identify the organizations that have met the minimum requirements and will move forward to the evaluation process. The application review period will be held from the 19th with a score deliberation meeting that will be public on the 28th, and we will submit funding recommendations to the board within the board packet that will be released June 30 for the board meeting to take place on July 10th. Again, the cone of silence does not end until the day after the board meets and have made their recommendations for allowing the programs team to negotiate contracts. And we anticipate contracts beginning August 1st. I'm going to stop sharing this. Then go back to my PowerPoint. Give me a second. Okay. Somebody on my team, let me know. Am I back on the PowerPoint? Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the minimum requirements to bid. What this means is you must have these things in place to move forward to the evaluation process. It is not a I'll have these things by the time I am contracted with CTEC. You must have these things in place in order to submit an application and move on to the evaluation process. So let's talk a little bit about this. Your proposal, the services must take place in Alachua County. You must be currently qualified to conduct business in the state of Florida, which means you must submit to us an active certification from Florida SunBiz. The trust cannot legally fund charter schools approved by the public school system or any schools that fall under the jurisdiction of the public school system, and that includes any of our public schools. You must have experience working with youth in out of school time. And the trust defines that as the time a child or youth spends in supervised programming when school is not in session. And within the application that we'll go over a little later, you must be able to detail what that experience is with your organization and your staff. You must be licensed or licensed exempt according to the Florida statute. So that is through the DCF, that means through the DCF process, you have been awarded a license from DCF, or you have your license exempt certification from DCF, and you need that in order to bid for this RFP. You must also offer services to students, kindergarten through 8th grade for a minimum of 4 days a week, an hour and a half per day, that is a minimum, and or after school enrichment clubs for high school students. All of your services must take place during the school year. And we want you to also make sure that you implement a ratio of 1 adult to 20 youth. I won't go over this again. I think I covered this pretty good when we reviewed the bid page. So unless someone has specific questions about the timeline, I'm going to move forward. So with the overview of the solicitation, as stated earlier, the trust has allocated $1 million for the after school RFP. The purpose is to fund programs that are offering after school for K through 12. And the term of service will be August 1st through June 30 of 2024. This is a very competitive RFP. We currently have an allocation of $1 million for after school, and we fund about 6 programs currently. So this is a very competitive RFP with the allocation amount. So a couple things that we want you all to keep in mind as you are proposing your program. For elementary through middle school, so kindergarten through 8th grade, of course, we're going to continue to look for applications or proposals that offer a safe place for kids to go after school. What's different this year is that the board would like to strongly encourage proposals to include math and literacy components. It is not a requirement. However, they are strongly encouraging that component for K through 8th grade. Those that propose those components within their application will also be required to assess math and literacy skills of their enrolled participants with pre and post assessments. And I want to note that CTAC defines literacy and math programming as a curriculum or best practices with specific implementation requirements to ensure maximum improvements. This does not include homework help. So if your after-school program only does homework help, that will not count towards a literacy and math program component for K through 8th grade. In addition to the proposals for middle school students, it is a requirement that if you're proposing working with middle school students, it is a requirement that you offer program components that expose them to ways, healthy ways to transition to high school or to their upcoming grade, as well as career exploration. We want there to be programming for healthy relationship boundaries, internet and social media safety, as well as healthy social and emotional development. And that is in addition to the literacy and math, if you're going to propose that for K through 8th. For those that are proposing high school programming, it is the expectation and the requirement of the after-school RFP that you will include career exploration, college prep, workforce development, leadership development, life management skills, and academic support and enrichment for 9th through 12th grade. So let's talk a little bit about target population. It will be the contractor's responsibility to recruit and enroll children K through 8th, as well as 9th through 12th. And those participants must reside in Alachua County. We also have some additional requirements for the target population, and children who are in families whose income is less than 400% of the 2023 federal poverty threshold guidelines, children with IEPs or 504 plans whose families also meet those same income requirements, any children from families who are receiving SNAP benefits, and children in foster care, as well as children in voluntary and formal kinship care or under in-home case management supervision. CTAC funds to cover the cost of those children participating in funded programs need to meet those target populations. And this next slide here gives you an idea of what the 2023 poverty guidelines are. We also want to note that the Trust has a partnership with the Florida After School Network, and we do utilize their standards. And the Florida Standards for Quality After School Programs define the core principles and best practices that lead to delivery of quality programming. So successful applicants should strive to meet the Florida standards for quality after-school programs outlined here on this slide. Your RFP, and for those of you who have already review the RFP, it details and defines each standard for you. And within the application process, you will be required to detail how you are utilizing these standards in your programming. Again, service locations must be in the county. And then we also want you to keep in mind that your location, it needs to safely and comfortably accommodate various activities. The outdoor environment has to be suitable for a wide variety of activities, including physical activity, group games, as well as individual play. And then making sure you have an alternative plan if an environment is inaccessible due to weather or other external factors. Keep in mind, and you will see this in your site profile, that if your organization does not own the facility that your after-school program will be held in, then you must provide CTAC with a facility agreement before the contracting period starts. So please keep that in mind, and I will make sure I show you where that's located in your site profile. Just to reiterate the scheduling and frequency, as well as the duration, 4 days a week at 1.5 hours per day is the minimum. In person for the schools as determined by Alachua County School District. We do expect our providers to have attendance rosters for their after-school programming and then have a clear strategy for safe transportation for youth to and from school, the community-based site, as well as their home. And remember that the trust cannot supplant. So that means if you are applying for dollars for the after-school program, you need to be able to expand your program. Funding that you are requesting from the trust has to show some sort of expansion or the creation of a new program where access to after-school program doesn't exist or it is limited. Now, for current after-school providers that we currently fund, the expectation is that you will not propose more funding without increasing your numbers also. So the evaluation criteria, this section is next. And so I want to spend a little bit of time here just to make sure that everyone understands this evaluation criteria. So there are 4 sections of the evaluation criteria that you will be rated on. Your past experience, which we talked a little bit about earlier, your project plan, and this is where you really need to detail your program. You need to talk about your service location, the need in the community where your program is going to be held, and how your program is going to address that need. Talk here about the target population that you intend to reach here, and keep in mind the areas or the age groups that you are intending to serve. You'll talk here also about how your program will be implemented. And again, the services that you intend to offer. This is where you need to identify if you're going to be implementing a literacy and math program, and how you're going to include those required areas for each age group. So if it is middle school, how you will be addressing the healthy relationship boundaries, how you will be addressing internet safety. And if it's high school, again, how you're going to implement those required components of high school, where you talk about career exploration, where you talk about the life management skills. Within the project plan, you'll also talk about your expansion and then describe your collaborative efforts as well. You also have the agency stability and capability. We want to learn more about your organization's mission and services, your organization's capacity to carry out the proposed program, and then also how your organization will sustain your proposed program beyond the contract term for if you're awarded dollars for the from the Children's Trust of Alachua County. And then finally, you have your budget area. You'll detail the financial support that your organization receives, including in kind, how your organization leverages those in kind. You describe your organization's fundraising activities. And then you will be required to complete the budget and budget narrative forms, as well as attaching the fiscal fiscal documents. Each of those 4 areas, you can receive a maximum of 25 points. And when it is scored, and I am going to stop after this in case there are some questions. When those areas are scored, all organizations that receive between 80 and 100 points will be recommended for funding. Those that receive 70 to 79.9 points will be recommended for funding, also contingent upon the available dollars after those that receive 80 to 100. And anyone that receives 69 or below will not be recommended for funding. There are opportunities to receive bonus points, and that is for those organizations that are that will have sites outside of the greater Gainesville area, and then organizations that are offering after school for 5 days a week. So I'm going to stop there, and if someone on my team can let me know if there are specific questions that I need to answer or if I should move on.
Mr. Rollins has a question around the poverty level.
Mr. Rollins, do you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Mr. Rollins?
I asked the question. I think Ms. Belita answered it. The language said that there was a 504 and the poverty level, and I was wondering if both of those are requirements, or is it either or, the 504 IEP and poverty level?
Yes, it has to be both.
It has to be both?
Yes, if they are asking for eligibility for an after-school program and they've identified the 504 or the IEP, the minimum or the target population includes for after school that they must also, that the family must also meet the income requirements.
And then I had a second question, if I may.
Yes, of course.
The language, I think in part 4 talks about how we sustain it beyond this contract year.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's premature, but I was wondering, were there any discussions about an auto renewal similar to what the trust made for current providers for the years, for second or third year?
So because the trust is currently finalizing its strategic plan, the board at a later date will be making a determination about renewal for the after-school RFP.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know Addison asked the income requirement voided for foster care, and foster care is a option of documentation that qualifies a youth for after-school programming. And then he had a follow-up question. Expansion is required to apply. That's a question. If so, how are you defining expansion?
So for the currently funded after-school providers, and I'm assuming that's why you're asking, because you are one of our current after-school providers. And we met with our attorney to determine what this is. For those current, if you are applying for funding at a higher award amount, the expansion is defined as an increased number of youth that you are reaching.
And Allison from Kids Count, she's asking also around the fourth element of the expansion on such as current contractor agencies with the trust, on how are those points being awarded if they're not able to show expansion. Programs like theirs evaluate if we don't think we can expand giving this reduced funding allocation.
Allison, do you want to take yourself off of mute to elaborate to make sure I understand what your question is?
Yeah, of course. So my question is around if we are being scored on this rubric and it's saying expanding access or services, a program like mine, I understand the piece about not requesting more than our current funding max. But if I'm not adding new seats to my program, how can I be evaluated well in this category when I'm being compared to a program that is adding an entirely new site, if that makes sense?
It does. So when we train our review team, they will be trained and have all the additional information as it relates to who we are currently funding. And I think it would be, it would make sense for currently funded after-school providers to answer that question in that way. CTAC currently funds us at this amount. We're not asking for an increased amount. So we've already expanded to reach the CTAC, or we've already qualified for the CTAC expansion based on what they currently fund us at. But we'll train our review team to be aware of that so that they understand how they are evaluating those currently funded providers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amanda is asking about Waldo, which is a rural area site that we're focusing on for bonus points. Her question was, does Waldo's count for that? And yes, it does count as a rural site for bonus points.
Thank you. Okay. Is it safe to go on?
Christy, can I ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Have you, and I apologize if I missed this, reviewed what possible bonus point elements will be?
Yes. So the slide that I currently have up, I hope you guys can still see my slide. Yes. Okay. So 10 points will be 10 additional points will be awarded to organizations that have sites outside of the city of Gainesville. But that, and I want to note that that also includes some of our unincorporated communities that might be Gainesville, but they are, Monteoka, Fairbanks. And so there is limited access to after school programs there also. And then 10 additional points for organizations that offer 5 days a week for after school. Okay.
Addison has a question around mental health counselors, and I don't know if I can answer this, but Addison, if that is staff member that you currently have under your program is part of your program, that is part of your personnel staff of the program. But if there's a different question you're asking, can you ask that question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess pertains to to the expansion question, or the questions around expansion or currently funded. So there would be an expansion of that program, or that offering that we have within the after school program. How can we expand our mental health program under the you're saying we can't ask for more money if we don't show expansion, but what if we show the increase is related to hiring on an additional mental health counselor that would then expand the numbers that mental health program that we have shows expansion? So the number of students that benefit from mental health services would expand, but maybe not the total number of students that are in our program because we're limited due to space.
an expansion is defined as the overall number of children that you are reaching.
But with a subset of our after-school program?
What do you mean? I mean, I hear your.
So we have
example.
we have 60 kids in our program, but our counselors can only take on 20 a year.
So the expansion is not a subset of your program. It is an overall total number.
Okay.
If I can, I view that as more of a allocation of your program budget towards that staff member services towards the youth versus an expansion of the program. It's more about how you allocate your overall program funds based on funds if awarded through the trust or whatever other source of funding you have to go toward that staff member services.
And ensuring that, that's a great point, Dion. I'm glad you said that. Also ensuring that if there is another funder paying for your mental health, that you are not asking the trust to also pay for a position that a different funder is paying for.
Well, many of our positions are split by 3 or 4 different grants. So could you clarify that we can't ask the trust for funding? The trust does not fund 100% of any position currently, and to be a healthy, sustainable organization, diversification of funding for each position is a positive. So can you help clarify that the trust will not fund any?
The trust will not, so for clarity, you need to ensure that you are not billing the trust for time of any position that you are also billing that same exact time to a different funder. So you would just need to make sure that whatever time you're billing us for, that same time cannot be billed to a different funder. I do get what you're saying, where multiple funding sources support a certain position or a certain program. That I get, but you would need to ensure that you're not billing all your funders for the same exact time.
Yeah, our audit and
or if you wanted to talk that through with fiscal, then there are office hours that you can schedule to ensure that you have a clear understanding of what that means.
no, we do an audit every year, and that gets flushed out in that audit, and we have passed that. So we understand of not double dipping into salaries and payment. So I think I'm clear on that. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, we'll keep going to the next slide. Well, see if I can actually. All right, so at this time, I am going to turn it over to the contract managers to talk a little bit about the contract review and negotiation period.
All right, thanks, Christy. Belita and I will be going over this section. As Christy mentioned earlier, the term of the contract will start August 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 school year for 2023-24 school year. The RFP recommendations will be going to the board on July 10th. Following that, we will be starting the following Monday on the 17th, starting contract negotiations, which is going to bring you to what we're going to be discussing here. Doing those negotiations based on what is approved by the board for moving forward for doing contract negotiations, and then also who has scored to meet the minimum requirements. And as we internally will be having discussions on the dollars amounts as it fits into that $1 million budget that Christy mentioned earlier. Once we start negotiating the contracts, a lot of the attachments that are going to be a part of your contract moving forward will be discussed during that contract negotiation period of time. Such documents such as the scope of services and site profile that you will submit, After review and discussion, we will discuss with you at that time on finalizing those number of students, locations that you submitted as well. Also, we'll be discussing the budget and the budget narrative based on what will be awarded to us that program during those contract negotiations. Speaking of your budget and narrative, your overall budget with the contract is eligible for an applicant to, for the first month of that August, to request 25%, up to 25% of the overall budget of your contract at that time, but this is after the contract is signed. And also when there's a purchase order created through the fiscal department, you will be eligible to ask up to that 25%. So it's a process in between once the contract is signed, and then the fiscal department creates a purchase order number for you in order to request those funds. With us up to 25%, you don't have to ask for the full amount. That's why we're expressing up to. Following that, there's a recurring that you will have to recur those funds before you can start to get additional funds of your overall budget. So for instance, if your budget is $100,000, you can ask up to $25,000 for your August invoice request. So you will then have to, the following month, occur up to that $25,000 to start getting additional funding outside of that requested, but it's not a mandatory. That's an option for agencies to request that 25%. You do not have to request that. Also, attachment as a requirement to is going to be part of more of what Belita will be talking about deliverables. It's the certification of insurance requirements. I've also, you can see the slide, it is important to have that address and the certification of insurance document that you will be submitting, as we will be their policy holder, and we'll go in that section if you're not familiar with it. We do have examples we can share with you as well at that time when we're doing the contract negotiations. I think I covered the first part of that, but we hope to have these contracts finalized, negotiated, and ready by August 1st. Sometimes that process goes a little bit longer. For the next part of the contract, during negotiations, I'll let Belita continue to explain the other attachments that will be a part of the contract.
Okay, can you hear me? All right, awesome. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Okay. So just to show everyone, a lot of you may be already familiar with these attachments. So you don't see anything? Okay, sorry. I guess I started talking a little bit too early. Can you see it now? Okay. So you have attachment D. It talks about the deliverables. The date range, of course, will be contingent, will be sorry, that threw me off. The date range will be aligned with what the contract term is, which is August. It starts August 1st. So basically the 15th of the month, your monthly invoice, the very first deliverable will be your certificate of insurance, which Dion just covered, the monthly invoice, and then the dashboard information just refers to the data that you will put in. That is just basically your attendance. Bonnie will cover that further in the presentation. So that is attachment D. Then attachment E is just your performance measures. These numbers will be solidified during the contract negotiation period. It just goes over the number of children enrolled, the number of days the program will be offered. That also will be explained a little bit more by Bonnie doing further in the presentation. And we will go down to attachment F, and just we really want you to pay attention to this attachment. It just talks about the mandatory reporting of abuse. Just make sure that you're familiar familiarize yourself with this so that in case you do encounter this, we do require that mandatory reporting of abuse is done. And that is all for attachments.
Before we move on, I have a question to answer. Ms. Tillman, when you apply for this RFP, you tell us what grade levels you're planning on to have after-school program. We're not telling you a particular grade level. Our focus for this RFP is K through 12th grade. So you have to explain to us your focus of age group with your application. I hope that's answering your question. Christy Arrington, if you're proposing a middle school program and also elementary program, a part of the application, you will see there's on the site profile, you have the option to add more than one program on there. And I know you're more familiar with our site profiles where site one may say elementary and then the other one may say middle school or high school. So you will fill it out in that order of the application on the site profile. All right, next we'll have Bonnie. I didn't see any more questions around the contract, so I'll pass it on to Bonnie.
Excellent. So the CTAC is seeking to expand access to high quality programs that are directly linked to positive outcomes for youth. We want to fund programs that are demonstrating strong evidence of impact. All our programs have a purpose, are aligned with our goals, and have metrics. For this after-school RFP, we've broken it out into performance measures based on grade levels. So there's an elementary school performance measures, there will be a middle school, and then a high school performance measures. There are a few things that are consistent across the performance measures, and then there are a few things that are a little bit different. So I'm going to go over this in detail, and feel free to ask questions. I'll pause after I go through the 3 slides about performance measures. So we use the results-based accountability model where we answer the 3 questions of how much, how well, and better off to measure the quantity of our efforts, the quality of the efforts, and then short-term and direct impacts of the program. So for how much, we look at the children enrolled, how many children has the Children's Trust been able to fund to provide access to these quality programs. So in your site profile, you'll indicate the number of children that you intend to serve at your site for the elementary school age. What we're looking to see for the performance target is that at least 90% of that target has been met. For the days of programming offered, this is the one thing that's the same across the 3 grade levels. The school year is 180 days approximately. So for each of the days of programming offered, we have a target of 150 days. All our after-school sites that we've currently funded this year have all exceeded that, so that should be a pretty achievable target for and after school, given the RFP wants the sites to serve on school days. For how well for the K through 5, we're looking to see that 75% of children are attending at least 65% of the program days. So that's about 2/3 of the program days that we want to see. At least 3/4 of the children or more are receiving the program for that amount of time. We do a satisfaction survey with families to get their feedback on the program to help inform us about the quality of the program. There's an item that asks about program communication, and the target for that is 85%. And then families also rate the overall experience and whether they were satisfied with the homework help and they felt their children were safe while in the program. The new one this year is youth maintain or improve socio-emotional skills. And we're not basing the target on gains or maintaining or improving this year. We're piloting this process to learn that whether, to what extent, to establish a baseline, to what extent children are improving their social emotional skills. And we're looking to just see that 70% of children who attend 4 months or more will receive a pre and post assessment to learn what kind of gains are happening within the after school programs that we're funding. Next slide. This is for the middle school grade levels, performance measures for them. So the first two are exactly the same as elementary school. The new how much is the program days where the specific enrichment contents were offered. So if you've had the opportunity to review the RFP, you'll see that we're seeking for the middle school sites to offer programming related to transition to high school or the next higher grade, career exploration content, and healthy relationship boundaries, internet and social media safety, and healthy social and emotional development. So we'll look to see on at least 5 days that these program contents were addressed within the programming. So that would be an area that when I get to the data collection part, we'll look for you to report on that these enrichment contexts are offered. For youth participation, instead of looking at just the days of attendance, which we'll ask you to collect, but for the performance measure, we want to see that the youth are participating in the program content, the 5 specified program content areas, and that 75% of youth are at least experiencing 3 out of 5 of the enrichment content areas. For the youth, for the youth in grades 6 through 12, they're going to be completing their own satisfaction survey. So through K through 5, the parent or the family will complete the satisfaction together. For youth in grades 6 and up, they'll complete a satisfaction survey on their own, where they will have questions whether the program staff cared about them. They'll rate that, whether they enjoyed the overall experience, whether they felt a sense of safety and belonging, and whether they had satisfaction with the homework help offered within the program. Same as with elementary school, the youth will maintain or improve socio-emotional skills. We're just evaluating that as a baseline at this time, but we want to see that the program supports as many youth completing the survey that are eligible to complete both the pre or post for that. Next slide is high school, which is pretty similar to middle school, where they have those same youth enrollment target, days of programming offered, the same youth satisfaction survey items with the program staff cared about them, overall program experience, satisfaction with that, safety and belonging, and satisfaction with homework help. The one difference between this and the other one is that the enrichment content areas are defined differently in the RFP. They have 6 areas of content that are a little bit different than the middle school age, and we want to see that youth are again participating in that, and that is indeed being offered as specified in the scope outlined in the RFP. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions that have come up. For social emotional skills, does CTAC have an assessment for that they have in mind, or do anticipate sites would create their own? So I do have a couple of several assessments that I have in mind. You are able to describe any assessments that you are currently using. The ones that I do have in mind, for the K through 5, it would be either completed by the staff in the program to rate the social emotional skills of youth. It's a free assessment that's that's about a page, 24 items. And yes, I would allow what I have in mind is that that the programs that are awarded would be able to choose from a set of assessments. And the ones that are in mind are the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, which is a validated assessment and has been used. It can be used by both parents and caregivers. It can be used by staff. It can be used by youth if they're 11 through 17. There's the youth report of social emotional skills and the adult rating of youth behavior. Again, these all have been assessed for their psychometric validity and reliability. Certainly, it's not set in stone. If there's other suggestions, I'm willing definitely outline what you think would be a good measure, but those are the ones that I strongly have in mind at this time. And we have a hand.
Yes, I think you answered some of it with the ability to maybe choose the assessments. Currently, we have the SAO, which is the student-led assessment, and then also the PQA for quality. These are national validated assessments. Is there, I guess, the question or advocacy to get similar programs on similar assessments? That way we're comparing apples to apples, and that we would be able to, in some cases, see how our answers measure up against nationally to other programs throughout the country. Is there plans to move in that direction, or could we as providers, depending on who all gets funded, come together and agree upon similar assessments? That way we can all be rated under the same if everybody agrees, but with maybe some choice or flexibility if people already have other assessments.
Yeah, so I definitely want to have a time for us to come together after the programs are, we determine which programs are going to be awarded and decide, have a training on the assessments. I'm going to pick a few of them that I would like us all to be able to choose from. And since this is our baseline year, we want to gather information, learn how it worked, how easy these assessments are to administer, what the results are from these assessments. But I think this is our year to learn. We're adding it this year as our first time that we're going to be measuring it. So we're looking to look at that. One reason I was reluctant to move forward with the SAO because there is such a cost associated with that one, where the other ones that I looked into are free to use with permission. But I think, yes, definitely, there will be a point where once we know which programs are being awarded, we'll come together and we'll talk about the benefits of each, and then we can decide which ones each program will use, and then we'll move forward with learning from what we collect in this next fiscal year. Okay. So we can move to data collection if there's, okay, SAMHSA. Okay, so this year we're also going to be moving into SAMHSA. And all data for all our programs moving forward, we are going to be transitioning into SAMHSA. I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to make our communication and efficiency a lot better when it comes to looking at our data, being able to track things live and in real time. So upon being awarded funding, the program staff will register and receive training on how to use the data system. And I also wanted to state that the trust requires the IT vendor to safeguard this data. This data will be encrypted while at rest and in transit. Our IT vendor completes a routine annual external security audit to make sure all safeguards and proper practices are in place. There's also an audit trail to be able to review all system access, and we're able to configure the system for each user's specific role. We'll be applying all the industry standard best practices, including a strong password expiration, inactivity, timeout, inactivity, login suspension, identity authentication, and system logouts after multiple failed attempts. So more to come on SAMUS. Again, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to make our being able to learn and leverage our data and our efficiencies, not only with the evaluations, but with our other business processes such as invoicing and contract management, much more efficient. So yay, SAMUS. Next slide. Our data collection. So these are the different elements of the data we're looking to collect and learn about. So basically this is basic information, demographic information such as our city. Again, note this must be for kids must be from Alachua County, date of birth, grade level, school name, race, ethnicity, gender, and then a scholarship eligibility criteria, parent, caregiver, language spoken. So this is information that helps us better report on who we're serving and understands the types of youth and children that are accessing our services. And this would, with this as well as everything else, would be submitted through the data system. The next slide has our service provision participation data. That would be the days that the youth attends the program, participation in those enrichment programmings like the career exploration and whatnot, the enrichment program offerings. So on what day you offered, for example, the internet safety and social media awareness, that would document the days that those specific programming elements were offered and the number of days the program offered to help us understand how much services are being received and the level of engagement, and then just to be able to evaluate the different performance items. The last slide gets into the surveys and assessments. So this is, and I put the grade levels by it. Again, if you're doing K through 5, the 6 through 12 assessments wouldn't apply to you. If you're doing a literacy and math curriculum implemented, that would be something that we would look to see for those programs. But if not, that wouldn't apply to you. But those are basically how the different information on the performance measures, how that would be informed by these different assessments. So the family satisfaction survey, that would be for the younger kids. The older kids would get to weigh in and give their feedback directly. And then the youth development survey, those would be the surveys that would tap into the social emotional growth within the youth, both at pre and at post, and the literacy and math that would be specific to programs that are implementing that curriculum. Since we might get a variety of different literacy and math curriculums, we're just asking that for each child that you report whether there was a gain, no change, or a decline, rather, because we might not have consistency across the assessment process. So this is my last slide. Are there any additional questions for me? Okay, I think back to you, Christy.
Thank you, Bonnie. So now we will move into the actual application training. This portion of the Bidders Conference is to walk you through the different application forms as well as the attachments that you need to provide along with your application form. So if you have had an opportunity to review the actual RFP, there is a submission checklist, and that submission checklist identifies 4 different forms and then 4 different attachments that you need to include. So this first slide is an image of Form 1, which is the prospective contractor certification. You need to make sure that you complete this entire form, making sure that you are identifying the type of contractor you are and what state, and then making sure you are identifying whether there are exceptions. And then number 21, putting the full amount that you are requesting across all of your sites in that section for 21. Things that we've seen in the past include providers forgetting to fully complete the third page of Form 1. So making sure that you are adding your name, address, zip, your federal employee ID number, and then make sure you sign the form. So we've gotten some of these that have not been signed before. So please make sure you are taking your time. This is a part of the application. So you need to make sure that you are filling this form out completely. Again, every single form that we are asking you to complete can be downloaded to your computer individually and saved, and you can work on it from your computer. You do not need to try to go within the PDF of the RFP to do this. Download these forms individually. We should not be receiving the RFP back. You don't have to send us the RFP back. Your application consists of the forms and the attachments that we're going through now. The next form is the budget and narrative forms. So I am going to stop sharing here, and Fiscal will take over to review their budget and budget narrative forms that you will need to complete and submit.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Okay. This is our budget and our budget narrative form. The first tab you're going to see, and it's going to look similar. The difference this year is the subsequent tabs that we're going to go over are going to feed this first tab in the gray areas. So if an item or a tab is not something that you are requesting funding for your organization, you may skip that tab. So don't feel like you need to address every single tab if this is not something that you are going to request reimbursement of expenses. The first tab that we come to is your other funding sources. This is where you would identify any other organizations or in-kind services that your organization will receive for your overall budget. And if you need to put in additional description in the area below, you may do that as well. Our next tab is personnel. This tab is for your employees. There is a completely different tab for folks that contract services for you. So if you are issuing them a W-2, they would go on this tab. If they're getting a 1099 from you, then they would be a contractor and they would go under the contractual services tab. In here, you're going to identify the position. I recognize that some of your programs may have more than one person in a position. Below, it shows you how you can identify and calculate how you're arriving at the total. These fields in white are, you can type in on them. The blue areas will auto-populate, and they will also feed back towards this first tab. If you notice in this area, it's only asking about the wages. That is the only thing you need to identify for each one of your positions. The next tab is the fringe that each position may or may not be asked for. There again, if your organization doesn't offer retirement or life or health insurance, or you don't want to ask for that to be reimbursed, you can put 0 in. You don't have to ask for it. Don't feel obligated to have to fill it in unless it is an expense that you would like to have considered for reimbursement. When you enter the positions on this tab, it will automatically carry forward. You notice now these are blue and they'll carry forward for you. And then you only need to concentrate on the areas that are not blue, to add the additional fringe that you would like to have considered for your total reimbursement for your employee. Next, we have a transportation tab. There again, this is something that if your organization is expecting or asking for transportation reimbursement, you would fill it in what your requests are in this tab. If you do not have transportation, you don't need to fill anything in. Office supplies. Office supplies, and there's a definition in each one of these tabs of what we're looking for this type of expense. We were trying to help some organizations to start thinking about other reimbursements that they possibly may not have realized that they could potentially ask for. The office supplies in this has to do with your general organizational needs. Program supplies is what you're asking for your specific programs. So art supplies, if you have an art program, would go under program supplies, not under office supplies. As I spoke earlier about contractual services, this particular tab is for people that you would give a 1099 and that are not your general staff employees that you would issue a W-2 for. There again, there is a definition of what we're looking for the people that you want to capture in this tab. Certifications and trainings. This is something different this year that we feel strongly about. Your organization may have a specific training or a certification that you would like to have considered or ask for the trust to reimburse you for. Beneath it states what we're looking for, but you could add those requests in this particular tab. If you're not asking for any of this, just leave it blank. You don't need to fill it out. Printing. This is for program specifics. You can see again, there's a definition and what we're looking for. If you would like to put additional justification or a description, you can do that in free text in this item below. Okay, then we go to communications. This communications these are phone, internet items and cost that directly are needed for your program, not there has certain like MailChimp, Fit Degree, the Cox Cable, which is the internet, depending on where you're located. And you would want to make sure that you put in each item separately and then fill out the total number of months, approximate cost per month for your total cost. And then how much you would like to request that we reimburse. And next tab, insurance, same type of information. You may have one type of insurance, you may have 3 different types of insurance. You may have automotive, if you're transporting the youth. So you would put that in this area as well. Okay. Equipment and maintenance. This is for non-capital items, and the definition is below, what we're looking for of the types of items that you may request. If you've previously requested a laptop, you would need to make sure that you're not requesting a laptop within a year later. And then other operating expenses. This last tab is for anything we might have missed. Because of the varied programs that we support, we wanted to make sure that we gave everyone an opportunity to catch anything we might have missed on any of the preceding tabs. Once you, or as you are filling in the tabs that are relevant to your program, you will notice that they will populate automatically on this first tab. And will total at the bottom of what your overall budget that you are requesting. And then, are there any questions so far?
Nicole, there is one question, ensuring that the final spreadsheet that you had me download, it has all the same explanations and justifications in it. Have you made any additional updates to the spreadsheet that I need to upload? I see explanation in the one on the website, but I just wanted to, someone was concerned that that information that they are seeing on your screen now is not in the one that's on the website.
I downloaded this from the website this morning.
Okay, so Couture, this is the same spreadsheet that is on the after school bid page.
It's there? Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nicole.
No problem. Well, I'm sorry, I was trying to say, is that the only chat? I'm trying to go down with all the rest of the chats. Okay, okay. Well, I appreciate it and thank you.
Are there any additional fiscal questions as it relates to the fiscal forms or the spreadsheet?
Yeah, for currently funded programs, how are we, I think our contract ends September 31st. And these contracts look to start August 1st. The way the budget's set up, I mean, I think we can do it, but it's going to be a little finagling. How do we account for the fact that, so that we don't double dip? How do we account for the fact that there's going to be, what, 2 months of overlap with those contracts? How are we supposed to navigate applying for this budget and also fulfilling our current contract as it is related to fiscal?
Nicole, were you about to respond to that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So the ones that are currently receiving funding, I'm going to need to work with you, Christy, on, because if they make it, I would say go ahead and do a full 12-month. And then if they go to the next round of that, then we'll need to adjust and figure out how much they have remaining, because no two are the same. So what that's going to look like, there's a lot of variables with the 6 that we carried forward that are really going to be, it's going to be on a case by case basis of what that looks like, because with the new budget, they have an opportunity to completely realign and ask for items that they may not have even asked for in their original budgets. So I would say go ahead and do it like it's a full 12-month, starting new. And then when you make it, or if you make it to the next round, then we'll go and we'll look at each one and make sure that we're not having an overlap or duplication.
I agree, and it'll definitely be a case-by-case situation, and we can take a look at all of that during the negotiation process, and we can make sure, like I said, there's no double dip. Okay.
If I can also give some feedback on that. For those currently 6 contracts we have, if you are moving forward with this new funding, but as you're planning to submit your budget narrative, I will review your current budget to see how much funding you have allocated for the remaining August, September months to make those adjustments with your new proposed budget with this RFP. Just say, for instance, if you already have remaining $13,000 for one personnel, what does that look like for the remaining following months, October all the way through June, as far as paying that salary? So yours is a little different than maybe others who have no contract with us currently. So you may have to just kind of look at that. And then, like as Nicole said, if there's item lines that you currently don't have on your current contract, then you make sure you fill those in for the full. It's just an idea to fill it in all the way from August through June. If it's not a current line item you are currently being funded for those particular 6 contracts. I think that would be the best mindset to look at it when you're submitting, your new budget for this RFP.
Okay, so we will go on to our next form. So Form 3 is the organizational information and organizational narrative. This form is the actual document where you will provide the detail of the evaluation criteria area. So there's some additional questions about your organization, if you're eligible to apply, if you meet the minimum requirements. Here is where you'll also talk a little bit more about your license, and don't forget to attach your license or your license exempt certification to these forms. We are going to ask about any DCF class violations, and that you provide a copy of that information and how you have addressed any of those items. With all of our programming, the DCF Clearinghouse is used for background screening. And so we will require that you identify if current staff are cleared through the background screening, so that we'll have an idea of your capacity to utilize that information. We then go into the areas of the past experience, project plan, agency stability and capability, as well as the budget information. And again, this is all from the eligibility criteria. There are the additional questions also that talk about your discipline and behavior management plan, and then describing your ratio. We also talked earlier about the 7 standards from the Florida After School Network. This is where you will provide detail about how you are addressing each of those 7 standards and implementing those into your programming. And then we also want to learn a little bit more about any interruptions for different illnesses, whether it's COVID, whether it's the flu. We want you to talk to us a little bit about how you will handle those, situations. And then then form 4 is your site profile. Again, this is a 2-page form where you give us more information about your sites. You will complete one of these for each site. So please keep that in mind. That is what's there in red. So if you're saying you're going to have multiple sites, you need to make sure one of these are completed for each of your sites. So you're providing us with the site location, organization name, address, the contact information for each of those, the grades that you intend to serve, and then the overall number for children as it relates to your current number, your expansion number also. And then the second page, it's 3 pages, I apologize. You'll give us the site hours and operation. You'll give us a description of the facility, the amenities, rooms, occupancy, so on and so forth. Here is where it's noted that if your organization doesn't own the facility, that you'll need to make sure there is an agreement that is provided to the trust before contract execution can move forward. And you'll also provide an executive summary of the program and the services. And then here we want you to list your site staffing, those position names, number of positions, and the description of their duties for the after school program. This is your submission checklist. So this is important. We add this checklist to the RFP so that you have something that guides you to make sure that you submit all the necessary documentation to the trust. This is all we need here. We need the documents that are listed here. You can print this out, add a checkbox to it to make sure you don't miss any of the forms. Again, Form 1 is the prospective contractor certification that we reviewed. Form 2 is multiple pages. So when you download the budget and budget narrative, make sure that you print all the tabs that goes with that. Okay, so that when you go ahead and download your budget narrative, my phone is ringing, your budget narrative in the budget form, take a look at all those tabs. All those tabs should be printed out. So that it makes sense to your first form. And I said first form, your first tab in the budget narrative. Form 3 is your organizational information and organizational narrative. Again, site profiles, you have to complete one for each site. And then you have your attachments. So you have your current 990 form, or your annual audit. And I'm going to stop there to see if Fiscal has anything they want to add about the attachment 1 for the 990 and the annual audit.
We understand that some people or some organizations don't have fiscal audits or don't pay for fiscal audits. If you do not pay for a fiscal audit, then please provide your 990s. Hopefully someone's doing your taxes. If you don't do your taxes, then maybe you want to send us what you send to the Department of State or the Department of Agriculture, where as a nonprofit, you're required to do your reporting. Also, the other option is to send us the information that you are providing to your board. So if you are doing financial statements to your board, and or not any of those other three that I've already mentioned, then we need those. So some kind of financial information is needed. Thank you.
The attachment 2 is your license or license exempt status per site. And then we want to have your electronic logo in the format mentioned here on the checklist. Therefore, if you are awarded funding, we already have that information. So that is a required attachment. And then proof of active legal status from Sunbiz, and that is the link there to the website. All of this information is in your RFP. Please, please, please make sure that your application is sent to the procurement website. Your application should not be sent to any other email, not my email, not the contract managers. Don't send it to invoices or fiscal. They are only accepted when you send it to the procurement email address that you see here. That same procurement email address is listed throughout the RFP. It's on the cover page. I believe it's on the timeline. It's also on the same page as this submission checklist. Please make sure you clearly label all of your application information so that when it comes in, it all makes sense and we can organize the submissions with all the correct organizations. Please don't forget that any addendum that we add to the bid page, you need to print it out, sign it, and submit it with your application. We'll be looking for that. That is not that's not something that's going to disqualify you. If I see you're missing it, I'm just going to email you and say, hey, send me your addendums. The things that will disqualify you are late applications. If it is after 3 p.m., it is late and we can't accept it. If your documentation is not signed, so make sure you are signing your applications, which is why I pointed that out earlier. There's only one form that you need to sign, and it is Form 1 here. That is what you sign. So making sure that you sign that form. And then please don't handwrite your application. All the forms can be downloaded. They are Form 3 is a Word document. So all you are doing is typing your information in there. Form 2, the budget, is a spreadsheet. Nicole walked through you being able to enter that information. If you find a form that you're having a hard time navigating, then send an email to procurement. But don't handwrite your forms. You know, if you could do an electronic signature on Form 1, great. If that one you need to print out just to sign, that's fine. Scan it and then email it to us along with your other documentation. Don't take pictures of your application and send them to us individually. We have seen that also, where every page of the application was a separate image. Don't do that either. So they are downloadable. You save them on your computer and you email them just like any other document. When you send your application into the procurement email, you will receive a notification of receipt from that same email address. So you send them in and we will notify you that we have received it also. And any questions?
Christy, it was asked, can we add addendums as a checkbox on the checklist?
Can I add an addendum?
No, a checkbox for any addendums
A checkbox
as a
for
checklist
the
item.
addendum. So that would require an amendment to the RFP. It's a great suggestion. And I will find out. I cannot answer that for you right this moment. I will find out. But again, please remember that if you are missing an addendum, you will not be disqualified. However, I will email you and ask you to send it to me, but you will not be disqualified if you forget an addendum. And we are constantly adding them between now and June 6th, I believe it was. You are not going to be disqualified for missing an addendum. Which probably means I'm not going to add it as a checkbox, but I will make sure you are not disqualified. Are there any other questions?
All I can say is remember June 16th, 3 p.m. Do not wait to after 3 p.m. June 16th.
Yeah, please, if you can get it in, if you hit send at 3, it's late because it's already 3 o'clock. And we can't dictate, how much time your server is going to take to get to our server. So it's risky if you're waiting until 2:50 and 2:55. I don't know if the risk is worth it for you to add one more period or one more question mark. So let's get them in so that we can get as many qualified applications as possible. Okay. All right. Well, we sure do appreciate you all. No, there is no word or page limit. I appreciate you all spending the last almost 2 hours with us. We'll do this again at 6 o'clock. And so if you want to join us again, we look forward to seeing you. If you know of any individuals that are asking about this, let them know that they can join us again at 6 o'clock. Again, both recordings will be available on the bid page. I'm hoping that we can get them up before the end of the week. And don't forget that we have those office hours. We have the link to submit questions, and we're excited about working with a lot of you in the future. And that was it. Thanks, guys.